and the crowd went silent. Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for the President's Welcome Back Address. My name is Zeb Davenport, and I serve as the Vice President for University Advancement and External Affairs here at Westchester University. And for those of you who are new to the university, the President's Welcome Back Address is one of the campus's many traditions. This is a time where the President reflects on our past accomplishments and provides us with the vision for the future. And before we begin the program, I would like to just acknowledge the university's executive leadership, which includes Dr. Jeffrey Osgood, the interim executive vice president and provost, Dr. Tracy Ray Robinson, vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Jen Bacon, interim deputy provost, Mr. Todd Murphy, vice president for administration and finance, Mr. Andy Lehman, vice president for university affairs and chief of staff for the president, and Dr. Tabitha Atkins, interim vice president for student affairs. I would also like to recognize a few other individuals who took time out of their schedule to be with us today, and they are State Representative Kristen Howard, State Representative Chris Pieli, Board of Governors, PASHE Board of Governors member Janet Yeomans, Regional Representative from U.S. Bob Casey's office, Ethan Selesky, the Mayor of Westchester, the Borough of Westchester, Lillian DeBaptiste, President and CEO of the Greater Westchester Chamber of Commerce, Katie Walker, Executive Director for the Westchester Business Improvement District, John O'Brien, Westchester Goshen Township Supervisor Tina Marie Smith, Chester County Controller Margaret Reef, and Westchester Prothonotary Debbie, did I get that right? Deborah Bookman. Let's give these folks a round of applause. So today is a very special address, as this is President Fiorentino's final welcome back address after serving Westchester University for more than 40 years. Let's give that a round of applause. Dr. Fiorentino has been at Westchester since 1983. He's worked his way up through the faculty ranks from an assistant professor in economics, chair of the department, dean of the college. At that time, it was called the College of Business and Public Affairs, which now the College of Business and Public Management. Then he became vice president for external affairs, and now he serves as the president of our university. As the dean, he successfully led that college for nearly 20 years. He hired amazing faculty, some of whom are here today, and others who have gone on to lead institutions around the country. He helped to secure the AACSB accreditation for the college when others doubted that it could ever happen. He helped to secure the Graduate Center. He worked with faculties and supporters to create the Cottrell Entrepreneurial Leadership Center. And oh yeah, somewhere along that journey, he made the best decision of his life. He met and married Sue Roberts, the brains of the operation. Let's give Sue a round of applause. All right, back to Chris now. In 2013, Dr. Fiorentino became vice president for external operations. And in this role, he focused really on expanding the Philadelphia campus, distance learning. He also spearheaded the development of the Center for Community Solutions, which links business and civic leaders who have research and business needs with university faculty, staff, and students who can help solve those needs. In April 2016, he was appointed the interim president of the university, and in January 2017, he was named the 15th president of Westchester University. During his tenure, President Fiorentino led the institution through the most difficult and challenging time in the history of higher education, a worldwide pandemic. He led the construction of the largest building on the campus, a 175,000 square foot facility, the Sciences and Engineering Center and the Commons. He ushered in the recent change in Westchester's Carnegie classification as one of only 133 R2 universities in the country, while ensuring that the university maintained its commitment to teaching, access, and affordability. He positioned the university to be among the nation's most prominent academic institutions. According to last year's rankings by U.S. News, out of all the institutions in the country, Westchester University was ranked 250th overall and 124th in top public schools in the country. Now, a little insider baseball, all right? You didn't hear it from me, but you heard it here first. Check the rankings. The new rankings come out next week, and we urge you to take a look at where Westchester will be ranked overall for the coming year. But again, you didn't hear it from me. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our 150 Forward comprehensive campaign. So for those of you who don't know, the campaign goal is $65 million, and it's set to close at the end of the next fiscal year. And right now, we sit at about 90% of the goal. We fully anticipate meeting that goal by the end of this fiscal year. And I can tell you, I have been in the room where there have been folks who have said to Chris directly, I am giving to you. I am doing this for you, for the university. So he has led this campaign, and a lot of folks have given to this university because of their connections and the influence that he has in our community. He's championed and endorsed initiatives such as the DEI efforts. He hired the first chief diversity officer, which is now the vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. He supported programming for first-generation college students, the Dub-C Autism Program, the Resource Pantry, the Veterans Center, and the Moonshot Mission, which you will hear more about later. Friends, after 40 years, I actually could go on and on and on, but he would either yank me off the stage or fire me. And I want to keep my job, so I'm gonna end by saying this. Westchester's momentum is high. Our brand is stronger than it has ever been, and the energy and the excitement about this place cannot be contained. And I want to just say this about Chris, and I can say it without a doubt. First and foremost, Chris Fiorentino is committed to his family, his wife, his children, and his grandchildren mean the world to him. He is focused on the success of Westchester University. He cares deeply about the faculty, the staff, and the administration of Westchester, and his main priority is, and will always be the success of our amazing students. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the 15th president of Westchester University to the podium, Dr. Christopher Fiorentino.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Zeb. I feel like I should just say, let's go out to the quad. I mean, wow, that was very nice. Thank you, and welcome everybody. Of course, I can't see because of the light, but I hear people out there, so I'm delighted that you're here. Good afternoon, faculty, staff, students, and distinguished guests, and welcome back to the 2023-24 academic year at Westchester University. Now, before I start, I was fed a little bit of information, not the U.S. News stuff, that's not coming out till Monday, but we were projecting enrollment this fall to be down. It's been a challenging couple of years, and we were projecting somewhere in the 16,500 or 600 range. I was told this morning that we don't quite have the final number, but our enrollment is going to exceed 17,000. So that is amazing. And so I do want to congratulate the admissions officers, enrollment management, department chairs, all the faculty and staff who played a key role in allowing us to achieve a goal, frankly, that we were not expecting to be able to get back to until the fall of 2027. So that's really quite an accomplishment, and let's give them a round of applause. So this is the last time that I'll be giving the fall welcome back address. I've announced my plans to retire at the close of this academic year. I will have spent 41 amazing years at this place, and I always seem to want to turn one great year into just one more, even greater year. I've thought about retirement for a while, but I've always pushed it off because there's that nagging one more thing that I really want to get done before retiring. I come to recognize that one more thing is always going to be there. And I've come to realize that it's time to pass that one more thing on to the next era of leadership at Westchester University. I'm confident that Westchester is positioned to appoint an excellent president who will be assisted by an extraordinary leadership team, supporting our exceptional faculty and our staff. I know that all those levels of excellence will be more than capable of turning that one more thing into one less thing the university has to accomplish. Since this is my final and by far my longest welcome back address, they tell me I have to put some jokes in, so that's okay. I've been thinking a lot about exactly where we are as a university. You might better understand my thinking by stepping into the university president's office for a day. My days tend to be pretty volatile. They're a bit of a roller coaster ride that combines dramatic ups with distressing downs. On any given day, I often attend some occasion that leaves me feeling just great about our university. One such recent occasion was a donor dinner. We were in the middle of making our way through dinner. I was sharing incredible stories about our students when all of a sudden, one donor loudly announced, "I feel my checkbook flying out of my purse." Sue, I'm sure you remember that evening. That moment really stuck with me. I didn't even have to ask that donor for money. I just had to share stories about our university. And that image really stuck with me. As a university president, there just isn't a much better image than a donor checkbook launching itself in your direction. That was a very big night that resulted in some very nice checks for our university. So in my job, I attend some event like that, and I leave feeling that everything is right with the world. But that feeling only lasts until my next Zoom call, where I learn that everything is rather wrong with the world. The Zoom call might be with other PASHA University presidents, where we talk about all the existential threats encroaching upon our universities. Threats like funding gaps, declining enrollments, or student housing shortages. Let me give you another recent example of a downward turn in one of my days. It was a busy day on campus, just recently. I took a break and headed over to Tanglewood for some lunch. I made a sandwich, but I took only one bite of the sandwich before my phone rang. When I picked up the phone, I learned that we had an escaped murderer in the vicinity of our campus during the first week of class, and I was asked how I wanted to manage that situation. That was a new one, okay? I've been at this a long time, but that was the first. I did manage to gulp down my sandwich, and you know, that's what my days are like. Any given day reads a bit like the opening line of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. Every day seems to be the best of times and the worst of times. Perhaps that's a bit too strong. As I said, as I start my final year at Westchester, I've been thinking a lot about where we are as a university. So where exactly are we? In my view, we find ourselves in a place where there is cause for celebration, but also cause for concern. Cause for celebration because we have so many people doing so many great things. But cause for concern because we face a higher education environment that grows more and more challenging by the day. I'd like to elaborate a bit today on both of these observations. Let me start off with our cause for celebration. My view has always been that a university is not so much a place as it is a people. Those people are faculty and students and staff doing extraordinary work on an ordinary basis. As the university president, one of my favorite parts of the job is just spending time with folks and listening to stories about all the wonderful things going on our university and with our alums. I love hearing stories about students like Zach Starr. Zach is one of our amazing student entrepreneurs in residence at Westchester's Cottrell Center. When Zach was growing up, he watched several friends struggle with high nicotine vaping addictions. Rather than just accept that problem, Zach set about trying to solve that problem. He created a product, a tobacco-free vaping alternative designed to help folks kick their harmful vaping addictions. Then he created a company, Quicks Labs, to manufacture and market that product. You can now find Zach's vaping alternative for sale in the UK, and it will soon make its way to the US market. I love hearing stories about alums like Julie Freimeyer. Julie graduated from our athletic training program, and she is now a vital part of the training staff for the Kansas City Chiefs. I say vital because some of you may remember that not too long ago, our Philadelphia Eagles played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. This is a little bit of a sad memory for many of us, but we're very proud of our alum. Going into that big game, the Kansas City Chief quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, was suffering from a painful high ankle sprain. But he not only played in that game, as we remember, he played really, really well in that game. So how was he able to do it? Well, on Super Bowl Sunday, Mahomes tweeted that Julie was the reason I was the guy I was on the field today. So while it's a painful memory, aren't we proud that it was our alum who caused us to lose the Super Bowl? Okay. But I think we're going to be back, so stay tuned. I love hearing stories about amazing events like the Nobel Peace Forum we hosted on our campus this past spring. That forum brought 3 Nobel Peace Prize committee members here to talk about everything from how do we build a society based upon peace to how do we open up dialogue between parties with intense disagreements. As part of that forum, several Westchester students participated in an extended workshop with the Peace Prize committee members. Late in the day, those students just found themselves chatting with our preeminent Norwegian guests, chatting about all sorts of stuff. In fact, at one point, their conversation turned to the all-important topic of, wait for it, favorite superheroes. One student described this point in the day as utterly surreal and unforgettable to just find yourself in such an ordinary conversation with such extraordinary individuals. I love hearing stories about the important experiences of Westchester students abroad. One such group of students recently traveled to Saarland University in Germany under the supervision of history professor Bob Kodosky. Once in Germany, these Westchester students worked in teams with Ukrainian students. On their very first day of working together, a plane flew overhead. Upon hearing that sound, the Ukrainian students instinctually sought cover under the tables in the room. That was a moment when our Westchester students, who have lived in a relatively safe world, learned about how a very unsafe world affects others. Together, these students began the process of collecting oral histories, and they are now all collecting stories of those living through the terror and trauma and tribulations of the war in Ukraine. I love hearing stories about faculty outreach efforts that advance our moonshot for equity. One such outreach effort involves our STEM faculty working with our Center for Nanomaterials. That effort, led by physics professor Brandon Mitchell, is using a major grant from the Department of Education to get low-income kids interested in STEM careers. So our STEM faculty members are now regularly taking a van filled with research-grade science equipment to various Philadelphia elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. At those schools, they are having students do real science with that equipment. Brandon has shared a story about a ninth grade student at Masterman High in Philadelphia who contacted him after she attended a number of workshops conducted by our Westchester faculty. This particular student reached out to Brandon because she had decided to become a biomedical engineer, but she wasn't quite sure how to make that happen. Brandon has been trying to guide the student down the right pathway for her desired STEM career, and he's even had conversations with her about which calculus courses to take in high school. Another story I love hearing about faculty work that is advancing our moonshot for equity involved the PRIZE program headed by the Dean of our College in Education and Social Work, Deisha Williams. PRIZE stands for Partnering in Raising Inclusive, Zealous Educators, a fabulous acronym. The program is trying to help our state's terrible teacher shortage, particularly the shortage of teachers from diverse backgrounds. The program is partnering with school districts in our area to create a more vibrant pipeline for future teachers. In this program, high school students who plan on becoming teachers can start taking education classes for free at our university. The first student to start in this program was Cecilia Parati from Kennett High School. During her senior year of high school, Cecilia took her first college-level education class, a child development class, here at WCU. And I'm proud to report that Cecilia started with us this fall as an early grades and special education major. We anticipate that there will be many more future teachers like Cecilia who have been encouraged and mentored through the PRIZE program. Together, all these individual success stories combine into one compelling collective narrative about our university. Together, we have created that collective story, and that collective story has changed perceptions about our school. Our university has always been doing great things, but too often those great things have gone unnoticed and underappreciated. I started at Westchester back in the early 1980s. Uh-oh, that was a picture. My beard was less gray then. As I was saying, I started at Westchester back in the early 1980s at a time when you would find students in the library flipping through the card catalog, and when you would find students in their dorm rooms listening to music on 8-track tapes. Now, I was going to say students in the room can ask their parents what that is, but I think it would actually have to be your grandparents on the 8-track tapes, because that goes pretty far back. There's actually a guy on a commercial right now who's carrying one on his hip. If you've seen that, it's a commercial for a grocery store, and that was one of those players. So anyway, those things don't exist anymore, but they were pretty common when I started at Westchester. At that time, if you stopped someone on the street and asked them to share their thoughts on our school, a school that had just changed the name from Westchester State College to Westchester University, they might say something like, "It's a teacher's college with a pretty good music and phys ed program." And that statement would be true. Westchester was all of those things. But it was also much more than those things. But too much of what we were doing was going unnoticed and underappreciated. When I was hired as the Dean of the College of Business and Public Affairs, the university president at the time, Madeline Adler, said to me, "Nobody knows we have a business school. We need to change that." And she was actually pointing at me when she said, "We need to change that." At that time, we had a good business school with dedicated faculty members doing important work. But much of their work was going unnoticed and underappreciated. However, over time, all those little stories of the exceptional work being done at our university have combined into a much larger narrative. A larger narrative that has really changed how people think about our university. Today, our work is getting noticed and is being appreciated. That change in perceptions about our university has changed the experience of being the university president. Changed how? As the university president, I now find myself getting noticed a lot and appreciated a lot. And that hasn't always been the case. When I first became president, lots of folks on campus had no idea who I was. At that time, as I walked by students on campus, I rarely received any big smiles of recognition like I do now. But I often receive those small, polite smiles that seem to say, I have no idea who this guy is, but I'm going to smile at him because he looks like an overly bookish academic in a coat and tie, and he probably needs all the smiles he can get. Over time, that has really changed. A dramatic change from not being recognized on campus to often being recognized off campus. It now happens frequently. I'm somewhere, anywhere. I was hitting golf balls at a driving range, and someone called out, "Mr. President." That call came from a group of Westchester alums, and they wanted to let me know how proud they were of their university. I was in the grocery store, just trying to pick up some milk, when someone approached me and said, "You're the president of Westchester University." And I said, "Guilty." He told me that 3 generations of his family are Westchester alums, which led to a conversation about some of the great things going on at our university. I was buying a pound of salmon down in Ocean City, so I wasn't in Westchester, I wasn't in Chester County, I wasn't even in Pennsylvania, when the young man wrapping my salmon said, "Sorry to hear about your retirement." Now, I'm noticing a pattern here. I talked about lunch and dinner and buying milk and buying salmon. I do more than focus on food, but it just so happened that there were some good examples of things. A lot of things happen around food. So with all these encounters, 2 things are true. First, when people recognize me, they don't recognize me as an individual. Chris Fiorentino, the guy who was a volunteer fireman in his 20s, they recognize me as President Fiorentino, the guy who is in charge of Westchester University. Second, when people approach me, they say nice things about me, but they say really nice things about our university. Their praise is not so much about anything I am doing as it is about everything that you all are doing. The praise is coming because of all those little success stories surfacing everywhere on our campus, showing up everywhere on social media, and turning up everywhere in the news. All those little stories have created one big story that has changed how people perceive our university and how people recognize the university president. I'll miss those little recognition moments after I retire, but I plan to keep wearing purple and gold in hopes that occasionally people will recognize me and share their WCU stories with me. So we have much cause for celebration, but there is also cause for concern. Cause for concern because while I see so many promising trends on our campus, I also see so many challenging trends in the environments that surrounds all college campuses. What are those challenging trends? One of those challenging trends is that students are coming to us with significant learning loss. The pandemic imposed tremendous costs on all of us, but some of its most severe costs came with lost student learning. During the pandemic, K-12 educators everywhere tried desperately to keep their students on track. Unfortunately, we now have a mountain of evidence that shows that those efforts were not very successful. One such recent piece of evidence comes from the National Assessment of Education Progress, an assessment that is often called the nation's report card. That national report card recently showed the biggest drop it has ever recorded in teen reading and math scores. Turning all that learning loss in high school into learning gains in college is going to be a very big challenge for us. Another challenge revolves around mental health. The students coming to college today are struggling more with their mental health than past students. Since 2012, every measure of teen mental health and psychological well-being has moved in a decidedly downward direction. Since that time, the number of teens in our country suffering from clinical level depression has doubled. It hasn't increased by a bit or a smidge or a tad. It has doubled. And that is a shocking statistic. The students coming to our university today are more depressed, more anxious, less hopeful, less optimistic, and less resilient than past students. Gen Z's mental health crisis is real, and it really affects everything we are trying to do at our university. Somehow, we have to turn all those negative mental health trends into a positive college experience for our students, and that is a real challenge for us. When it comes to what I see as cause for concern, another challenge we face is the declining support for free speech and the free exchange of ideas on college campuses. For some time, the Knight Foundation has been tracking attitudes about free speech on college campuses across our country. Their most recent national survey found that almost 70% of college students report that their university's climate stifles free speech. We're also seeing a dramatic reversal of just who supports free speech. Historically, people with college degrees have been more supportive of free speech than individuals without such degrees. That makes some sense because college is supposed to be a place where students are exposed to all sorts of ideas, where they think about all sorts of ideas, and most importantly, where they talk about all sorts of ideas. So we would expect that students who have the opportunity to attend college would be more supportive of the free exchange of ideas. While that might be our expectation, our current world instead delivers the unexpected. Now, going to college actually appears to make one less supportive of free speech. College is becoming less of a place for the free exchange of ideas and more of an environment where the free exchange of ideas has no place. So what does this mean for our classrooms? As a professor, I always loved instigating good back and forth arguments over ideas. As an environmental economist, I had lots of great material to get those arguments started. In one of my favorite classes, I would present my students with a fixed choice. They had to make a purchasing decision, a decision between buying a car with an air conditioner or a car with a catalytic converter that reduces pollution. One decision would promote their comfort, the other would protect the environment. But I set it up so that they wouldn't be able to buy both. They had to pick one or the other. So what do you decide in that situation? These fixed decision problems would always generate great class discussions. Some students would argue that the only ethical decision was getting that catalytic converter. Others would counter-argue that the only smart decision was getting the air conditioner. With all those arguments going back and forth, I could highlight the complexities of economic decision-making. My pulse is starting to race here. I could highlight the fact that rational economic decisions often depend upon what everyone else decides. If everyone else opts for the air conditioner, then that choice becomes the only rational choice. Under those circumstances, being the only one to buy the catalytic converter won't really help the environment. But passing on the air conditioner will really make you uncomfortable. And that's why individual economic decisions will seldom solve collective problems. Those fixed economic choice scenarios would always spark great classroom discussion. But in today's college classrooms, we see less and less active debating, particularly on any subject that connects in any way to our overly polarized politics. Classroom debates today are too often stifled by a perceived majoritarian orthodoxy. Once students perceive that there is a right side on an issue, no one wants to place themselves on the wrong side, even if they are thoroughly convinced that the wrong side is actually the right side. Now, if students perceive that socially and politically proper choice is buying the car with the catalytic converter, then no one argues to buy the air conditioner, even if they think the air conditioner is a more rational choice. It's very difficult to maintain an intellectually engaging campus if students feel that they can't say what they really think. And that's a real challenge for us. Attitudes about free speech are not the only attitudes that are cause for concern. As a higher education institution, we also need to be concerned about the increasingly negative attitudes about higher education. Pew Research Center data show that over the past decade, the share of Americans who believe that colleges are having a negative effect on our country has grown dramatically. And now that number stands around 40%. Now think about that, 40%. And that's not the percentage who feel that college isn't the best option, or that college is too expensive, or that it takes too long. No, that's 40% who believe that colleges are harmful to our nation. That's 40% who essentially believe that our nation would be better off without the work that we do. Adding a bit more color to that viewpoint, an editorial writer in the American Conservative recently remarked that all colleges are doing today is creating a class of wealthy, intolerant, bigoted, and ignorant snobs. For those of us in higher education, the growth of such attitudes is a real challenge for us. As a higher education institution having to navigate an increasingly challenging higher education environment, there is cause for concern. How do we meet all these challenges? In my view, there's both a right way and a wrong way to do it. The wrong way is simply to lower our expectations. With this wrong approach, we deal with any student deficiencies or difficulties by simply expecting less of our students. With this wrong approach, if we have always expected our students to run a marathon by graduation, then we just scale back that expectation. We no longer ask them to run a marathon because when they try, they look too tired or too anxious or too stressed. So with the wrong approach, we tell our students it's fine to just run a shorter race, maybe a 5K. We can't engage in that kind of thinking. We can't just expect less of our students while they are in college because no one is going to expect less of them once they are out of college. They will still be expected to complete that marathon. That marathon may come in many forms. Maybe it's passing the NCLEX nursing exam. Maybe it's getting through the CPA exam. Maybe it's completing the social work licensing process. Maybe it's just doing a good job in their first professional position. Whatever their marathon happens to be, we can't prepare them for that long race by only asking them to run a short race. We can't prepare students for the working world by asking them to do less work or easier work or frivolous work. If we take that approach, then we have failed our students, as we have only prepared them for failure. If they need to run a marathon, then we need to get them ready for the long run, even if getting them ready is growing more challenging. Even if it requires more effort and more work and more commitment on our part. But isn't that also true of anything worth doing? Anything worth doing takes a great deal of effort to get done. When I think of all the challenges that give me cause for concern, I also try to remember that our greatest challenges become our greatest accomplishments. Have you ever been asked maybe at some sort of get-to-know-you activity to identify your greatest professional accomplishment? If you've ever been asked that question, what do you say? No one ever answers that question with something that's easy to do. No one ever says that their greatest accomplishment was going to Starbucks on campus and getting a nice latte. Although, come to think of it, that's a little bit of a challenge. When it comes to our biggest professional accomplishments, we think of the hard stuff, not the easy stuff. For years, when I was asked about my greatest professional accomplishment over my time at Westchester, I'd always talk about conquering the accreditation process for our business school. During that process, we were basically told that we weren't good enough for accreditation. I knew that we were good enough, but I also realized that too much of our good work was going unnoticed and underappreciated. Getting that work recognized was hard. It was really hard. In recent years, when I'm asked about my greatest professional accomplishment, my answer has now actually changed. I now talk about navigating our university through the COVID pandemic. If someone had asked me back in February of 2020 if we could pivot the entire university to operate remotely, I would have laughed at them. I would have told them that such an idea was crazy and utterly impossible. But that idea doesn't sound so crazy anymore, as we found a way to run the entire university remotely. We made the impossible possible. And not only did we do it, but we did it pretty well. Getting the business school accredited and getting the university through COVID were two really big challenges. Such great challenges also become our greatest accomplishments. Let's think about how that truism applies to a tale of two students. Student number one is a perfect student. This perfect student comes to our university with perfect grades, with perfect test scores, with a perfect resume. When our perfect student steps into our classrooms, they do perfect work. We've all had students like this, and we love to have them at the university. They're a joy to teach because they excel at everything. But here's what I want all of us to think about. When that perfect student gets a perfect grade in a class, how much has that teacher accomplished? How much has that class accomplished? How much has our university accomplished? I always like to say that at Westchester University, we put students on a different life trajectory. But have we really changed the life trajectory of that perfect student all that much? I think that perfect student would continue on their perfectly promising life journey, whether they had any particular teacher, or took any particular class, or went to any particular university. In our tale of two students, let's consider student number 2. Student number 2 isn't quite as perfect. Student number 2 comes to us from a disadvantaged background, comes to us with sizable learning loss, and comes to us with considerable anxiety. When this student steps into demanding college classrooms, they struggle. They need more help. They need more guidance. They need more encouragement. Without question, student number 2 is more challenging. But if we get them through our classes successfully, and if we can get them through their degree program successfully, and if we can get them through the university successfully, then we have really accomplished something. Then we have put that student on a different life trajectory, a better life trajectory. There are lots of schools out there that only accept students like our perfect student number 1. They only accept students who are exceptional marathon runners, and then they graduate students who are exceptional marathon runners, and then they brag about all the exceptional marathon runners who hold degrees from their school. But that's a fairly limited accomplishment. With our public mission at Westchester, we have to accomplish much more than that. We need to take students who aren't ready to run a marathon, and we have to prepare them to succeed in that long run. That's hard work, and I know it's getting harder. It's challenging work, and I know it's getting more challenging. But it's worth it because our greatest challenges become our greatest accomplishments, and our most commendable accomplishments, and our most meaningful accomplishments. While student number 1 and student number 2 might come to us from different backgrounds with different abilities, and while they might start off college in a different place, we need to ensure that they are both able to cross the same finish line. That's actually what our Moonshot for Equity is all about. I did want to take a moment to acknowledge all the wonderful work that has gone on in that effort. An effort that includes the hard work of our Moonshot leadership team, advisory board, tri-chairs, and goal teams. It also includes work done by nearly 300 members of our campus community who have participated in some of our Moonshot mission. Their efforts are creating new policies and procedures and practices that will break down barriers that stand in the way of student success, the very barriers that prevent students from successfully completing their long college marathon. Their efforts give us much to celebrate. Could we give them a round of applause? So again, as I move into my final year at Westchester, I see both cause for celebration and cause for concern. All the things we celebrate give me every confidence that we will overcome anything that gives me cause for concern. When I think of all the stories of exceptional people doing extraordinary things at our university, and when I think about all those individual stories, how all those individual stories have collectively reshaped perceptions of our university, I am certain that we have the people to meet the challenges of this moment. I am certain that we have the people to turn this challenging moment into a moment of great accomplishment. And I'm certain that we have the people to transform more challenging work into more meaningful work. After all, that's why we all do what we do, and that's why we do it so well. While this is my final welcome back address, it's not my final day on the job. While I'm retiring, I'm not retired yet. And while I'm leaving, I'm not leaving yet. I love this university. I have given much of my life to it. I certainly intend to give all that I can to ensure that my final year here is my best year. With that in mind, I look forward to the year ahead. I look forward to working with all of you to create more success stories. I look forward to working with all of you to continue to push Westchester forward against the winds of a very challenging higher ed environment. And I look forward to not looking back at that one more thing I might have done at Westchester University. Thank you very much.
Well, don't go anywhere. After a man spends more than half of his life at a university, and the impact that you've had on our campus, our students, and the lives of people whom you've hired and mentored and worked with, it's no doubt that you have done amazing work at Westchester. But folks, anybody that understands what it takes to run a university knows that it takes a team. And these two individuals right here are the dynamic duo. And there's a running joke, and since this is your last year, and by the way, he said it's his last year. I know you're not done yet. But there's a running joke that we say, well, you know what? We should check with Sue before we check with Chris. And that's because they rely on each other's best wisdom and counsel. And although you've spent 40 years here, I know you've been here all your life. You're not retiring, so we're going to continue to honor and celebrate you. But Chris, thank you so much for all that you've done and all that you will continue to do for Westchester University. Let's give it up for both Chris and Sue Fiorentino. So we have refreshments out in the quad or Quoval. And we encourage you to go over and have some food and fellowship and get a chance to talk with Chris and Sue. And again, thank you all for coming and participating in this welcome back address. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.